Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, everyone. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to remind you that my book, Drummers on Drumming, is available now on Amazon as both a paperback and an ebook. Based on the Big Fat 5 segment of this podcast, where I sit down with my favorite drummers to discuss the 5 records and stories that shaped their approach to the instrument, this book is packed with insights from the drummers who redefined how we think about the modern drum set. You can grab your copy now by checking the link in this episode's show notes or simply searching Drummers on Drumming on Amazon. So thank you for all the support, and now let's get into the show. What is up? Welcome back to Drummers on Drumming, a podcast powered by Big Fat Snare Drum. This is another segment of the Drum Panel, and as I think you guys know, I'm on tour right now, and so today's Drum Panel involves Chance Famighetti.
Hey, everyone.
As everyone knows, and my good friend, amazing drummer, and MD, which is kind of the reason why he's here right now, the MD for this show, this tour, Eric Downs.
Hey, everyone.
All right, Eric, who are you, and why are you sitting in a hotel room with us right now?
Well, my name's Eric Downs. As your introduction basically summed up my entire life. I'm a drummer and music director, producer thing based in LA. The reason I'm in this hotel room with you right now is because the two of you are playing in a band for one of my music direction clients named Nicky Youre, currently on tour, opening for Good Neighbors, US, Canada tour. And I flew out to join you guys because, in all honesty, we had such a good time in rehearsal that I really, really wanted to get past work mode and just enjoy the show and the vibe of everybody on the road and see the show for real. So I flew out to hang out with you guys for a little bit.
That is not what I thought. I thought you were going to say, in all honesty, I've been watching the videos, thought I needed to come.
No, honestly, you guys have sounded great. I just wanted to, there's no better way to enjoy such an organic show that we've put together than it live and in person. Online, it just doesn't do it justice.
How did you meet Nicky?
I met Nicky in 2023. At the time, I was music directing and playing for Benson Boone. And we were on Benson's first U.S. tour. And Nicky was the opener for that tour. We were I remember this pretty clearly. We were about halfway through the tour. I remember we were in Denver playing at Summit Music Hall, I think it's called. And Nicky had pulled me aside in the green room, and he had said, "Hey, how do we get our show to be more like yours?" And I said, "Well, you just, hire the guy that built this show."
Yeah.
No, but I told him, I was like, "Look, I'd be happy to work with you. Nicky's a very, very cool dude, very chill, very pleasant dude to be around." And I was like, "Yeah, look, when this tour's over, why don't let's chat? I'd love to get in the room with you and workshop the thing."
Well, let's talk drama. What was your immediate thoughts when you saw Nicky's show for the first time?
Well,
and by the way, sorry to interrupt and do what I told you guys not to do, but the drummer of said show is right next to you, looking very mad at me right now.
Yeah, that's what makes this episode so unique. Is that as obviously 3 drummers, 2 of which who have played or are playing for Nicky in 2 different iterations of the show, and I'm the MD drummer who has been kind of there to steer the ship in both cases. And I don't know, it's a very, very unique kind of configuration. So, but nonetheless, to answer your question, my take when I first saw Nicky's show when he was opening for us was in all honesty, it felt young, I guess is maybe a good way to put it. It felt like this was his first real attempt at going on tour and playing in front of a bunch of people every night, that kind of thing. I know he had played, I looked him up, I knew he had played some performances here and there, but this seemed like this was like his first real tour. a lot of the sort of standard details that you'd pay attention to when building a show, I could tell that they were, perhaps, I guess maybe the nice way to put it is just like underdeveloped. And that's okay. At that stage, like that's kind of to be expected. But that's what kind of stood out to me. I was like, okay, cool. I think there's a lot of opportunity here. There are some fundamentals in place that we need to put in place. There are some things in here that actually work fairly decently. So let's just improve them. And it can be anything from musicality to arrangement and flow to performance, technical aspects, sound design, etc. It's kind of all of the above. And that's kind of where we started.
I want to ask a question that's nice about you real quick before you say anything.
Oh, I just wanted to add on. Did you think I was going to be mean?
No. I just thought I wanted to make sure that I got this because I wanted to make you feel good right now.
I just wanted to add that I was there when we met Eric because I'd been friends with Nicky for a couple years before that. And that current version of the show, we had drums on the tracks. So I was playing drums over the drums. And it was really hard to try to do that perfectly. And when we saw Benson Boone's show, Nicky and I watched it together for the first time, and we were like, why does that sound so good? And I was like, dude, I don't know. Like, and we couldn't figure out, and that's why Nicky ended up just straight up asking Eric, like, how do we do that? And I mean, a lot of it is just really skilled players and good performer, like, is the performance aspect of it. But us doing our show and then seeing the Benson Boone shows, I was with Nicky when he's like, I gotta ask this guy Eric like how to do it, and that's how we linked up with Eric.
Funny enough, I mean, that actually, maybe I didn't realize that or I'd forgotten that, but yeah, their original show was like, I don't know, 95% tracks. They were playing on top. It's not that wasn't real, but in terms of a track show, it was all there. And Chance brought back a very distinct memory. I was like, the first thing I told Nicky, I was like, hey, this is going to sound wild, but like, I know you have all the stuff in the tracks because you want that full sound. You want the huge kicks. You want the thick vocal stacks, all that kind of thing. But I was like, also keep in mind, that is going to make your show stale because now you're locked. You have to do that. You can't express, you can't deviate, you can't do anything because now it's going to sound like two people singing or two drummers or whatever it might be. And I knew that like from a conceptual standpoint, that was the first huge departure. I remember in the changes we made to that show, it's like, yo, we need to delete as much as possible. Not just to make it like, oh, cool, real humans are playing, whatever. That's a nice touch to it. But it's like when you're playing in front of real humans, you need to get as much of the technology out of the way as possible and make that connection between the people on stage and the people off stage as unfettered and pristine as possible. You just reminded me of that by saying that, Chance, and I don't know.
No, and we'll get into that
Yeah.
part of MDing later on, but I did want to ask, what were two super positive things you saw about Chance first time you saw him play drums?
Okay, this is actually one of my, so I have a million favorite parts about Chance, and he continually stacked them up as time went on. Like the more I knew him, the more I liked him. As a drummer though, more so as a person, the very first thing I ever got from him was that he was like, he has zero ego and is 100% sponge. Like there was never a single like, you know what it's like to go, well, we all know it's like to roll up to a gig and there's another band or two bands on the bill. You know, you're watching the other drummer. You're like, all right, what's this guy do? Does that guy any good?
What's this piece of shit got?
Right, exactly. That's what I'm thinking every time. But Chance, I think there was a moment when I think I was helping you tune your kit, maybe at one of the sound checks. And then I know I was helping you guys with like the Apollo or something at one point. But I remember like
Helping him tune the kit. You were tuning the kit.
I was trying to tune my drum set, but I didn't really know what I was doing.
Like,
at all.
how did you approach that?
Well, I was just twisting the things until I thought, because they were in the trailer, and I'm like, the cold air, the hot air is different.
Yeah.
Should I try to like tune it to a note or something? And then there was a point in that tour where I just stopped tuning it completely, and I was like, that's probably fine. And then at one point, the toms were so loose that I could just press them in, and the head on my rack tom was destroyed. And I was like really trying to fix it, and I couldn't do it. And then Eric's like, "You want me to help you out?" And I was like, yes, please. He was like the cool, really good drummer who was playing with the headliner who did not need to be helping me. Like he didn't need to help us at all. He didn't even need to talk to us. So
Yeah.
it was really cool that he did that.
All right, number 2.
Oh, number 2. The original question was about him or his playing or
You can interpret it however you want. I was more so meaning his playing, like, because we're going to get into that in a second. But so you said his humility.
Yeah, his humility is like what's shown bigger than his playing, to be honest with you. But from a playing standpoint, my assessment was like, yeah, okay. Which, I mean...
Which was your goal?
Listen, if anyone else was in the room sitting next to me, I would feel weird saying that. But like, Chance, again, he just has like, he could not have less of an ego about anything he does. And it's like the most refreshing thing in the world. And he knows that if I say like, yeah, it was fine, whatever, he knows I don't mean that in a negative way. He might even make the same assessment. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, well, I mean, that was my goal, was to be I was like, if I can just be passable, then I wanted to get better. But at that point, I was like, the fact that he said, yeah, okay, instead of, God, that guy sucks.
Because I also know Chance's backstory now, and which he told on the first episode of him like learning to play drums in 30 days. I will say this, that was not apparent to me.
Well, one of the questions we didn't get to last time with Chance was how you thought being a piano player made you a better drummer. And it was funny, even last night at the Hollywood Theater in Vancouver, maybe you remember this, there was like the last song of Good Neighbors set, and you did this fill, like mouthed this fill, and then you were like, space, because it was a very, spaced out fill. And I remember I was like, I think a lot of drummers don't think in phrasing enough. They practice all these rudiments and how to be tight in the click, but they don't just sit there and be like, how many times can I make a 4-beat fill sound cooler with just a tom and a snare? Like just work on creativity and phrasing. So in some ways, I think there's a lot of times you would probably come up with a more creative fill than I would, because I think too much like a drummer,
The fill that I mouthed last night was, instead of just like, it was like, the space between those two things was like a moment of like,
Yeah.
which I felt like is really fun for me. But I don't think piano playing is what leads me to think about that kind of stuff. It's the producing pop songs that I've been doing, of like programming drums.
Yeah.
Just being a pop listener, consumer person is what has led me to think about like, what could I do creatively on the drums? That's why drums are fun for me, because I don't identify as drummer guy with like, this is my thing and whatever I do represents me. I can have way more fun with it because feel like I'm just dicking around.
Yeah.
And so like, if I'm like, if I come up with a more creative, like, how can I make this more interesting than normal? I at least have like the freedom in my brain to like at least attempt it. But since I feel more like I identify as a piano player, I mean, and this isn't really a good thing, but like, I don't want to like try. I mean, I'll experiment and sound check, but as far as the show goes, I'm a little more careful with experimenting because I don't want to do something that sounds bad, because I feel like that is me, the piano is me. But with the drums, it's like there's just a less of a attachment. Does that make sense? I'm less like...
Absolutely it does. And I think more drummers should separate themselves from the instrument. Maybe they'd take more chances.
That is my name.
When you are writing drum parts, and I'm not sure, well, I'll ask you this. When you're producing, do you write them in, like pencil them in, or do you try and play them on your MIDI keyboard?
I've done both, but normally I'll find the samples of a kick, snare, hat, crashes, toms, whatever that I want, and then I place them in there. But when I'm producing a song, the drums are just there to support the song, even more so than when I'm playing it live. And so when I'm playing drums live, so when I'm producing a song, the drums are so simple, and if I'm going to add a fill, it has to mean something in the song.
Okay, well, I want to get into the minutia of that. So as a producer, you're never thinking, I want to... Because even if a drummer... Because, I mean, you are a drummer, but a drummer would say that sentence, but still in the back of their mind, they're like, yeah, but I want it to be like a kind of a cool fill, You don't... I mean, maybe you do think that.
Yeah, well, because I'm mainly a songwriter, piano player, and whatever. If I'm producing a drum part and I'm gonna put a fill in there, if the fill that I'm making is too complicated, but I know it would be an impressive thing to physically play, that does not matter because it's for a pop song. You know, if you played just the common person, a very simple fill with a lot of space, and it just hit all the right spots and just moved you emotionally into the chorus or whatever it's going into, that's way better than if it was like this crazy thing. Also, like, if you think about the intricacy of certain sticking, like a simple, like, da-da-da-da-da-da, just like a normal thing, but in person's like, well, the sticking was interesting. That doesn't matter at all, especially for a recorded song. So, anyways, I think producing pop songs, specifically that genre, has led me to, like, come up with fills or things that I think are more interesting to the normal listener, more so than impress another drummer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, and I can ask both you guys this, but when you are creating fills, do you start with the simplest thing and then go...
Oh, no, I hear it in my head.
But do you think it's based off the vocals? Like, there's like, say the vocals are doing like an eighth note thing. You're like, well, the fill's going to maintain the eighth note rhythm. Or do you just go, this is just a guttural thing. I think it sounds cool. Oh, it does sound cool.
The second one, I do not think about it logically like that. When I'm producing and writing a song, it's all feel for me because it's just what I want to feel. It's literally based off of my reaction to hearing it.
I almost wish I could, and I've talked about this with influences, be able to, like, if I want to work on an indie song, whatever, I wish that I could then Men in Black just my drumming ability. Because I think that no matter how hard I try to get to the point where you are, I'll never get there because I'll always have that drummer thing subconsciously.
Yeah, so you're saying it potentially gets in the way a little bit?
100%. Not potentially. I would say every time it does.
Yeah, I think, well, so I'm thinking about this process more, and I'll listen to the existing instruments, and say the section where the fill's gonna be. This is when I'm producing a synthesized drum part. I'll listen to it just be empty space because there's nothing there yet. I'll just hear in my mind what it should be, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And then I'll use the grid and, okay, so what I just heard in my head, then I'll use technical stuff and be like, well, that's obviously this line, and this line. So then I'll place them there. So you have to switch. So like from creative brain to logic brain to actually physically make what I just heard in my head. But the magic of just like hearing the silence and feeling what it's supposed to be and letting it come to you, that's my favorite part of that.
I'm going to answer this in kind of two parts because I actually want to connect with what Chance said and then go one step further. Because I'm thinking about this like, okay, when I come up with fills and stuff like that, whether I'm playing or producing, what's the process like? And it's interesting listening to Chance because I would say my process is identical. I literally do the exact same thing. And I would say that producing music over the years producing music that doesn't have live drums in it had the heaviest impact on my drumming more than anything else. Back in my days when I was like practicing like 4 to 6 hours, 7 days a week, I was trying to push myself to do the most, right? Figure out every little thing I could do, develop my fluidity and vocabulary and all that good stuff you should do. But it was all within the universe of my own mind, which is obviously worthless unless you're playing a drum clinic, right? So like when I started producing music, I would hear it in the context of like, I'm not behind a drum kit. I don't know what a room it is. I'm sitting here on a laptop. What do I just want the damn drums to do? How do I want them to hit? And funny enough, to your point, there are some times that I'll orchestrate a fill to mechanically do a certain thing. So for example, if I want something to move from like a double time kind of feel down to a halftime feel, I'll either use some sort of like dotted eighth sort of phrasing or like a dotted eighth subdivision or like a triplet subdivision so it feels like it's slowing down. Or a lot of times I'll even like modulate that within the fill of like, you know, that
16th note into an eighth note triplet kind of thing. Yeah.
And then, but not always. I mean, I always think of that way. Most of the time what I do is like, I'll have a section and I'll be like, something needs to hit here. Something needs to amp this up, pump this up in some way. And I'll just play the section as well. Literally what Chance does. and I'll just be like, yeah, this would be cool. And then I'll just go look for sounds and try and start flying them around until it makes sense. And I know that like with my own playing, the majority of the fills I do, I know the fills that I come up with are my best attempt at a simple drummery fill, if that makes sense. So basically meaning it's simple enough that if you're a regular audience member, you're like, that sounded great. And if you're a drummer, you're like, that sounded great.
I mean, yeah, that's the sweet spot.
That's the sweet spot. I'm not saying I always achieve that, but that's kind of where I think my vocabulary has ended up, where I'm not playing necessarily a lot of Pat Boone, Debbie Boone, but I'll do like a variation of that with like a little rough or something like that just says like, all right, for the drummers out there, this is this. But if you don't know what a rough is, if you don't know what a whatever is, like it doesn't matter. It should still hit you the same way. And then to extend that into like creating moments or impact, the intro to our current set is actually a really good example. I don't know if you guys know, if either of you know this, but I do this with every intro I ever build. But with this one in particular, I knew that there were certain mechanisms that were required. And so, to the listeners, I had spoken with Nicky, and we had come up with this idea where he would walk on stage. The original iteration of the idea was he'd come on stage with a bottle of wine, and he'd walk around, and he'd pour wine for all the band members as they're playing and that kind of thing. Now we didn't quite land there. We modified it a little bit, but I knew in my head, like almost from a theatrical standpoint, if I'm watching this show on stage and I'm an audience member, all right, let's work backwards. Okay, so we need to land is we're playing this song called Cheap Wine, which starts with this like a break to a vocal harmony stack with the band. Okay, so if it starts with a break, then we need to be big right before it for massive dramatic impact. And right before it, he's walking around, again in this iteration, he's walking around pouring wine. So I need some sort of vamp that either is big or gets big. So the drop impact into the a cappella part is very impactful. Okay, so I'm working backwards, great. So we got some big band section, awesome. Now to make that big band section dramatic and hit, I need some sort of something choppy to break it up right before the downbeat hits. So that's when we drop to the little middle section where Ben plays that fill. I was like, okay, we need something that I know there's going to be an intro groove thing that just sort of sets the tone and captures attention. If anyone's in the other room, they're getting drinks, it lets everyone know, hey, the band is coming. You have some time to get here. But I want the big section to hit hard. So the best way you can get a big section to hit hard is to be as little as possible right before it. So let's drop down and then drop it out and do a cool dramatic drum fill. And whatever it is, you can do whatever you want. I remember, if you remember in rehearsal, it's like, I programmed a fill, but that's just what I would do. In only the rarest of occasions, unless I felt wildly strong about that fill, I would say, like, don't do what I did. That's just a placeholder. This is where my head's at. But however this hits you, interpret it however you want and play. Anything you play here is going to be cool. So that's kind of basically I worked backwards and structured it all out. So every section has a function. And typically it's to set the next section up, or it's to create a vibe and then transition into some section. So it's kind of this weird work backwards framework of like, what do I need the music to do functionally or mechanically? And then how do we musically make that happen? Does that make sense?
I mean, yes. But hearing you guys talk about sitting back and listening, I've realized that for the last 10 Eve 6 songs, because what happens with Eve 6 a lot of times is they kind of work on the song and then they'll send me kind of the idea, and then I play drums to it, send it to them, then we talk about it, because we all live separately. I mean, John's in Austin. I've realized that I just start playing, I just mute the drums and I start playing right away, trying to come up with drum parts. But maybe I really should just like mute the drums and then just like fucking sit in the room and just listen to the song 10 times and just like in my head, like mind out the drum part. Because I just start doing it physically, which obviously that's when you're like, muscle memory tendencies are going to be obviously there, but if you're just listening, that won't be a factor. So I'm happy you guys said that, because I realize I don't do that.
Well, and to take that even a step further, and the cool thing is that this applies to everybody playing any instrument ever.
Yeah.
Is that, again, unless you're playing a drum clinic or something, the ears that matter the most are the audiences. And when you create a show, you want to have the greatest emotional and experiential impact on your audience as possible. Right? It's the reason they came. Why did they pay the 20, 30, 40, whatever tickets are, whatever they are, they're too much. But they paid that money They took the time off that night. They drove there. They paid for parking, all this stuff to get an experience that they couldn't get on Spotify or whatever, or on Instagram, or just watching TikTok videos and something. So like, how can you get outside of the constraints of those platforms to have an emotional impact? And if you think, and so whenever I'm putting anything together, I'm like in Nicky's case, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm a 16-year-old girl. What matters to me? You know, what is actually going to move the needle for me, if musically speaking, you know? And a lot of stuff, like, you know, from rehearsal, I'm talking about positioning on stage and like how you emote and all these types of things, which seems like, okay, is this music direction? No, not really. But if I'm a 16-year-old girl, these are the things that my little 16-year-old eyes pick up, or ears, whatever it might be, if it's a musical thing. Like, so I'm always trying to think through that lens.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso. Gift magical mornings with Nespresso Virtuo Pop. Compact and stylish, Virtuo Pop is made to meet every morning coffee craving. From espresso to coffee, hot or iced, at the click of a button. And celebrate the season with Nespresso's limited edition coffee flavors. Sweet almond and hibiscus, cinnamon and candied tamarind, and festive double espresso. Magic in the making. Shop the holiday gift collection exclusively at Nespresso.com.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
On this tour, for the most part, the audience is drunk people, like drunk couples
Yes.
in their 30s.
Yeah.
And, we've been meeting them, like last night, we've been meeting them after the show. They don't give a shit about, like, they just want to be like, woo!
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All the little intricate things that we'll add, even if it's me on piano doing a tiny little, oh, that was, creative, that's new, or Joey on bass doing a little bass fill, they're not even going to know why they thought that was cool. If Joey went, like, they're just going to be like, oh, what was that? They don't even know. They have no idea. It's just, yeah, you're right. Like, they got off work that day, they went home and they showered and they picked out an outfit, and then they got in the car, and maybe there was traffic and they were stressed if they were going to get there on time, and they waited in the line, and then they're spending like $15 for a drink just so they could get a little buzz. They just want a party. They're paying and they plan for a party. So our job, and this is like the most awesome job ever, is to just give them a party.
Well, and that's kind of, I didn't want to give pushback, but I was curious if the sentiment of the audience's ears are always the most important. I do agree with that as a theme, but I'm curious if there's ever a point where it's almost like the people on stage and listening to each other, that's the most important thing, because then that's going to give them the best show. I guess it's more genre context.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That's what I was going to say. It's very contextual. Like, if this is the Mars Volta, they don't give a shit what the audience thinks. So great, go crazy, be as insane as you can possibly can. Awesome. With Nicky, like, this entire new record the genre is dive bar music. So like Chance said, it's like, cool, it might be a bunch of mid-30s just trying to get buzzed and have a great time on a Thursday night. And if that's the lens you see it through, then it kind of can help inform your decision making. But that said, that doesn't mean that what is happening on stage between everyone on stage isn't important. When I say these things, it's almost assuming that stuff is going to be taken care of. Yeah, like if Chance is dragging all night, then yeah, the audience may not liminally know that, but it might still like make the groove feel weird, and it might make the band feel weird, which means the band can't play well. So I'm going to stop everything in rehearsal and be like, Chance, have you ever heard of a metronome? Go home right now. Don't come back until you can play. Until you've heard of a Ask around. Well, I guess, my last thing is the thing that I wanted to finally frame this in for the drummers, because it's a drumming podcast, is that like the advice that had the biggest impact on me as a player was like constantly, like incessantly recording yourself. because it gives you the ability to get out from the kit and try and listen to yourself as an audience member, and it'll inform everything from the way you hit to the way you tune your drums to the fills you play. If you're listening to this fill and behind the kit you're like, yo, that was blazing. And then you get out front and you're like, yeah, and it was all over the lead vocals. Like if I'm an audience member trying to sing along and I heard some sort of garbage, messed up fill, I'd be like, and it like broke my concentration and my ability to connect with the words and all this stuff, then like, dude, instant deal breaker, like game over.
No, it is true. And I can tell you the reason why I don't do it as much as I should is because drumming is the one thing that I feel really confident, and every time I listen to myself within 5 minutes, even if I play it 95% the way I wanted to, those fills where I'm like, God, that was a bad choice or whatever, it like will make me very, very sad. And it's hard for me to listen to because obviously the more you listen to yourself, the more you change to become a drummer you want to listen to. And you, as a musician, should like your own taste. So you get to be more of what you want. It makes sense, but it makes me really sad.
I mean, it's kind of the classic advice of like, do the hard thing if you want to get better. And I'm not pointing this at you.
No, please tell me.
In general, it's like in anything in life, literally, not just drumming, not music, literally anything in life. Like if you want to get better, especially fast, do the hardest thing you can do, because that's the thing that's going to push you. It's going to get you the most stark and obvious reaction and from your performance, So that's the thing that's going to stand out the hardest. Like if you're a string bean and you want to be strong, lift the heaviest without killing yourself. Lift the heaviest weight you can. Don't go in the gym, start with the pink weights and the treadmill at 5 miles an hour. Push yourself past what where you're comfortable, because that's where you'll learn and that's where you'll grow. And it's gonna suck. It's touching the stove. It's looking in the mirror when you don't look great. It's all of that stuff. But if you don't do it, you'll never know that you'll never know.
What do you think, Chance?
I was just nodding to agree with what Eric was saying. But also I was thinking about when I started playing drums for Nicky, and I wasn't used to feeling what it felt like to physically make the drum sounds that I had previously been synthesizing on a computer. And so I was playing just as like much as I can and doing fills that I had seen other drummers do in person. And because Nicky only had like 3 songs, I had at least 2 years of playing the same songs and hearing it on Good Morning America and like Sirius XM radio, like performances that were on YouTube that I would be able to watch myself back. That was the only way I could hear myself back. And that's when I'd be like, ugh, ew. Like the Good Morning America one, the tone of my snare was so bad and it was bleeding into Nicky's vocal mic. And it was like the loudest thing and it was disgusting. That was my way before I met Eric of hearing my own playing and hearing myself play fills over his vocal parts, thinking it was cool in the moment because my brain's on the drums, and then going, wait, that's not how I would have produced these drums if I was on my laptop. So that's what checked me and was like, okay, I started after that listening to him and just trying to orchestrate my parts around him. So that made me a lot better. Literally what Eric was saying was just listening to the vocalist first and then just playing between what he was saying. And at some point I remember, because Nicky didn't really pay attention to my drumming at all, and there was no one there. No one on the team was a drummer, including myself. So I was just like, I had so much freedom, and no, I did not think of myself as a drummer, so I was just in the Wild West, and I started changing parts up for fun, and I was like, well, how can I make this? What would I do if I was producing this song? And sometimes when I'm producing, I'll change the kick pattern for 1 bar just to feel some sort of impact. And I started a couple times, I would like in a verse, if he said something that was supposed to be impactful lyrically, I would change the kick pattern to hit a kick on every syllable of just that sentence. So you'd subconsciously feel like there was more weight on the words he was saying in just that sentence. So that was just a production thing that I would do on my computer, and I was like, well, why am I not translating what I've been doing for years before even doing this drum stuff? Mm-hmm. But I was able to hear myself back, but on the most, embarrassing scale, which is for the world. And eventually when I met Eric, he like took me to Eric. I think I said this in the first one, but he let me practice in his lockout, and he let me use his really nice cymbals and his whole drum set on the last drum show that I did for Nicky.
I like the huge takeaway from Chance's story, which I love. This is like such a Chance story, but like whether it's Good Morning America or if it's just a recording of a show that just got uploaded by whoever, that's not where you want to learn that you did something wrong. We've all the technology to check all that stuff before you go on stage for little to no cost in all reality. You could get away with an iPhone and an EAD if you wanted to check yourself. But if you want to multi-track, you want to make it like the closer to the show you can get, the better. But like YouTube is not where you want to learn that you fuck something up, you know?
I just wanted to add, there was like in the early stages, so Nicky's song, the way it works is like it builds up and everything cuts and he goes, I got my head out the sunroof. And I remember one of the first iterations, I thought, oh, it'd be really cool to do snare hits on that. So it was like, cut, 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 cut. And I'm like, and then I heard the back, I'm like, why the fuck did I do that? That's taking what I just said way too far. And then there was like, after that, it turned into me doing a fill. Okay, well, don't play over literally the line that is the hit part of the song. So then I did like, digga 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 dun, I got my head out. And then I used to be like, brugga digga digga dun, I got my head out. And then that was too much for me. I heard that in an iPhone video. And I was like, it's too many hits for the common person because they just need to, like, in a tribal way, get amped up to hear that line. So I just went, da, 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 da. I simplified it even more, and then I just stayed with that. And, the simpler thing. But I just went from complicated and got even more simple and more simple and more simple. But it's just all process. It was just like what we were talking about for some reason this morning about learning a language. And how the best way to learn a new language is to just go to that country and be forced to do it. That was my intro to drumming, was here you go, you're not a drummer, and now you're playing arenas. I'm forced now to do this instead of like taking lessons and playing in a garage and then playing with a small band and then playing clubs. And it was none of that. It was just zero to like, you're now at this high level, so just do it. And the pressure's on.
I just wanted to say I'm so glad that you worked that snare fill out of your system before I got there.
Working with Chance as an MD versus working with me, what's the difference in your approach?
You know, again, that's what is so compelling to me about this configuration of the three of us here. It's like, I can't think of another time when anywhere else in the world this would happen. So, you know, again, the previous show was like a pop show. There were two band members and like loaded with tracks. And it was Chance who was like, you know, a brand new drummer. And knowing that, especially after he told me the whole Genesis story, like I knew immediately, I was like, what are the priorities here? This is pop, all right? It's loud as hell. Everything's got to be 127 all day. That's what I need to get out of him. Like, I don't need to be saying paradiddle to him. You know, I don't need to be saying ghost note. These things are not going to matter, not only in the context of this music, but even to him as a drummer for who he is. These words are irrelevant. And I remember you guys talked about this on the first episode. I was like, yo, the priority, your snare, it's kind of like you're talking about like producing a track. It's like, how do you get... If you're producing like a pop track, it's like your snares are probably all, at least on whatever choruses and stuff, are probably all going to be basically max velocity. Probably. It's like, cool. You need to be able to replicate that. Cool. How do you do that? Here's how you hit the snare. Here's the force, the angle. Here's how you do that. Here's how you physically orient yourself to be able to do that. Here's how you can mentally orient yourself to be able to do that. Like that was the priority number one. I don't need to teach him fills or anything like that. That stuff doesn't matter. He needs to hit the kick hard. He needs to hit the snare hard. Mm-hmm. That's it. Obviously, like as time went on, we got into the fun stuff. And as our relationship developed, we got to push and pull a little bit in fun ways and like work in little fills and like, you know, whatever that intro fill to that set thing that was like, I didn't expect any of that to happen. That was really cool. But it's just like priorities. What does the music need? And what is the current band member capability of delivering that? Mm-hmm. And then it's just like connect those two dots. So in your case, it's wildly different because the music now got a lot softer. It's all very like woolly and dynamic and sensitive. And you are a more nuanced player because you've been playing for so long. And I know you, and I also know you as a person. And I know what you think. I've heard you talk about music when we hang out all the time. So like I know what you think about music, and maybe I'm not saying I'm inside your brain, I know everything, but I've heard the things that are important enough to you to say them in a conversation, and that tells me what you think about your approach of creating drum parts and contributing to a live band performance. So like with you, I don't think I ever told you once like, hey dude, hit a rim shot. First of all,
you did tell me to hit louder one time, and I remember that was the one conversation where we had a little bit of a push back and forth, I guess you would say.
I remember that. And that was a really interesting conversation. But
I think it was because my compression was too high,
That was so fascinating. I actually want to say that to the drummers because that was like something that I've never run into before, and it took me a minute to figure out that was probably what it was. So with you, it's like a lot more, talking about nuance, talking about phrasing, talking about note rates, touch and dynamics, accent this thing but not too loud. Your tone on the snare, can you take everything down an eighth of a turn on your lugs? These types of things are a language that I can speak to you because I know you've sat with them for a very long time and internalized them, and I know where you are in reference to where I think, in my opinion, I would want you to be in the context of this live sound. So, but that really applies to anybody. If either of you sat down at a metal show, either of you, I'd be like, okay, cool. Neither of these guys plays metal. Ben plays in a loud rock band, but like, I've never seen any of them play double kick. They play, for the most part, good sounding cymbals, not horrible clangy pieces of crap. None of them you own a China. Do you own a China?
I do own a China, yeah. The China is a very big part of Eve 6's sound.
I have Sabian B8s, which you know about.
The biggest things would be like, cool, what do we need to do to get these guys, if these are the guys in the band, they're playing this show, what are the largest deficiencies or that we need to like get in condition to make this show sound the way it needs? Like a huge part of this is me injecting my own philosophy into music. But like, as you know, this is something that in rehearsals I always found very fascinating working with Ben, because I think we approached the drum parts in slightly different ways, the essence of the drum part in slightly different ways. And if correct me, I don't want to mischaracterize you or misspeak for you, but the impression that I got was that Ben really wanted to replicate and stay true to the drums on the record, which were expertly recorded. Wouldn't change a thing. Wouldn't change a sound, a tone, a touch, a fill. It's beautiful, but it was also done on like hilariously old drums in an airtight, tight little studio with like heavy, I don't want to say heavy processing, but just like
he played soft and they made him sound big.
Right. It's that approach. And I was like, that's fine and that's really cool, but we don't have that luxury live. You're not in a tight little booth. You're not playing, drums from 200 years ago, and you're playing live. So it's like, what was really important to me when we were putting this together is knowing that that's where you're coming from. Let you keep all of the little touch, the ghost notes, all that fine essence. Great, keep all that stuff. If that's important to you, you should keep it. But to me, what's important is that Griff's not on the show. It's you. And not only is it you, we want it to be you. So it's like, great, you know the parts, you know the essence of what's supposed to be happening here, but make it yours. I don't want to hear you. I don't want to hear your impression of someone else, man. I want to hear you. I want to hear you being you on stage every night. So like, change those fills, hit those accents. Like, as long as you're not fucking up like important parts, make it yours, because like your personality coming through every night is going to sell the show, the performance, and it's going to have that emotional impact versus you trying to do an impersonation of someone else.
Well, funny enough, the song Guess That's Just Life, Griff did some really cool Home at Last, a la Steely Dan, a la Bernard Purdie shuffle stuff. And the way he did it sounds so good on the record, but the way he played it, I can execute what he did, not as well as him, but what he did sounds so unnatural to me. And I think I've permutated it every show of this tour. And been like, I'm trying to figure out how to keep that song in that halfway through the chorus shuffle thing he adds, but make it feel like me. And that's been kind of this little fun Easter egg that I've been doing every night. But yeah, I think going back to what I was saying about compression and that conversation where you were like, Ben, hit it hard. And I'm like, sounds good out here. I was using the EAD10, and I think that conversation forced me to turn the compression down a little bit, because I made it to where, if people don't know what the EAD10 is, it's this Yamaha kind of XY pattern mic you put in your kick drum, and then it gets an overall, I guess, picture of your kit, and then I run that through the third line to my headphones where I can like make the drums go up and down, separate from the mix. And if you have the compression up on that thing, it just makes it sound like you barely hit a snare, and it just sounds nice. It's deceivingly, yeah, it just compresses your drums. So I thought I was hitting nice and consistent, and it was like not really cutting through the front of house. And I was so confused at the time. I'm like, dude, it sounds good to me, but it was just, we were listening to two different drum recordings essentially. But yeah, it's been fun this is really the first time I've been MD'd.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know
Eve
that.
6 doesn't use one, Cannons doesn't use one. It was interesting and honestly nerve-wracking the first time going into it, because I've never had a drummer whose job it is to critique me in a way that makes me better, So it's never happened to me before.
I was gonna ask you how it felt to be in a way coached. When like coming in, it's like someone else comes in and tells you to change how you're playing. I would think that your initial reaction would be like, fuck you.
Well, I'm sure you saw that. I mean, there are tinges in that I consider myself a nice, agreeable dude, but sometimes when someone will make a suggestion creatively, I do have a trigger of, and it doesn't come from narcissism. It comes from unfeathered insecurity, and him being like, oh, if you say that about my choice, then it means every choice I ever think sounds cool must be shit, and then that means I'm a piece of shit. So like, and then I just get, well, I think it's fine. So it's tough. Absolutely, it's tough.
Well, and to like compound that even more, we're friends and peers. What an awkward situation.
And Eric's also an amazing drummer.
Chance, what's it like getting keyboard notes from me?
I just thought of that too. I was thinking about that, and it's so weird because I was just explaining how I identify as a piano player, and then I know that Eric is not really a piano player, but the notes Eric gave me, I also I love Eric, and I also respect him, and he's a friend of mine. So anything he said, I know is never coming from a place that's gonna make me feel like bad about myself. But his notes, I actually really like hearing notes from someone who doesn't often play the instrument I'm playing.
100%.
Because they're normally like, do something, make it feel like this. And it's kind of funny because it's like, that's how
also a creative, like it does make you think differently, which is exciting as a musician.
And I actually like the challenge of, the challenge is now make this guy feel the emotion he just said. Okay, what can I do literally to get that? And I actually really liked that challenge. He was like, make it do this. Or in the intro, he's like, throw in some references to other songs. Because the intro to this set is spacey and very open, and I'm playing like a verbed out piano, not a synth, but just like it works in the way that a synth would. And there's just all this space. And he goes, why don't you throw in some references to other songs? And I was like, oh, I can have fun with this. He didn't tell me what references to do, but like I actually really enjoyed it from him. So I did not have an insecure reaction to him saying that. I was just like, okay, cool, yeah. It's fun. It's music, Well,
because he's coming at it from he's judging you and your choices, not your technical ability, which is funny enough also something I'm wildly insecure about. If anything, I think sometimes I'll get more mad at myself if I feel like I'm not being creative as opposed to me not being able to execute something, because then my ADHD brain goes, oh, if I can't execute something, the plan is to then just work on it. But when there's oh shit, I can't think of a fill. Like, why can't I think of a cool fill in this fucking section? there's no plan to like, oh, I'll just learn more creativity. There's no, how esoteric is that?
You just go down to the creativity store.
Yeah, exactly. Just buy the plugin. Well, now you actually can't do that.
Yeah. To Chance's point, and this is like this is actually one of my favorite. I think you guys might remember this when we started rehearsals, both when we were doing Nicky 1.0 and now Nicky 2.0. When I start working with an artist or a band, without fail, the first thing I'll tell everybody is that like, yo, I'm not your boss. I'm just a guy who's not in the band listening to you and who can speak to you. Like, I'm not, like, with the exception of drums sometimes, I'm not as good at your instrument as you are. For sure, I cannot play bass guitar or keys as good as the rest of the band. Drums, I can get by.
I'm not going to let that slide. You're a great drummer, but move on.
Okay, well, thank you. But to my point, it's like, if the whole show relied on just one brain or one set of ears, then we'd be limiting it to that one brain and one set of ears. In the meantime, we have an entire band of people who have spent their entire lives perfecting their craft. Why would I ever tell you what to do? There certainly could be a time when it's like, hey, I think this fill is going to work, this particular fill or these particular accents or accenting on the snare instead of the kick or whatever. I think this is going to work particularly well. If that happens, I will say something. But otherwise, like, I don't ever want to, I would much rather let you guys lead with your voice, your mind, your creativity and your intuition for two huge reasons. It's an efficiency thing of like, I don't need to think about every single note that every single person is playing. It's a respect thing because I respect all of you in your respective instruments and know that you can do great things. It allows you ownership over what you're playing. If you came up with your fill, the quotes that you do in the intro of the set, if I told you what to do, like, you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. I'll play the thing that I was told to play. But if you're like, dude, I can do whatever I want. And I was like, I chose to quote this song, and I think this is really clever. Even if it's verbed all to all hell and no one can tell, it's like you now have like an integrity-driven ownership over that part. That fill that you put in the gap right before the big halftime section of the intro, I don't care what you do. Just don't mess everyone up. But like, it's however it comes out, you're gonna play it better if you own it, if you made it, if you feel it. And I could give you a fill that you might be like, oh, I feel that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'll do that. But I would much rather it come from you because I'm not on stage every night. You are.
I just wanted to say, Eric, everything you just said is why you're such a good MD. Because I'm imagining a world where Nicky hired a different MD and he comes in and he tells me exactly what to play on the piano. And if I don't do what he says, he's considering firing me. You know what I mean? Or he leaves no creative room. Why Eric is so good is because he respects us and he gives us freedom to do stuff. And maybe that's genre dependent, but that's why you're so good. And that's why people hire you, because you make them feel good about what they're doing and like they have a good time doing it.
Ben, when you edit this, could you turn that part up so more people hire me? That would be great.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that, Chance. And in all reality, I like to think that that's my strength. And sometimes when we talk about self-talk and these types of things, that's also one of my greatest insecurities, truthfully speaking. As you're right, in certain genres, it is the right thing to have someone just come in and say what to do. But more often than not, I prefer not to, for all the reasons we just said. But as a result, there are many times that I feel, I think I sometimes categorize my approach as more of like music coaching than direction sometimes. And I like it. I think it's so fun to synergistically work with everyone in the room and everyone get vibing and feeling good about what we're doing and all this stuff. It like builds the bond between everyone, and like that's stuff that you can't, no matter who you are, you can't walk into a room and make people bond, but you can create an environment in which they bond naturally, and that's a strength that you walk out of the room with and you hopefully don't lose. But a lot of times, my negative self-talk is that, damn, dude, I don't think, do people think that I like know anything about music? Because like, I kind of just tell everybody else to do music, but I don't tell them the music to do. Do people think I actually know what I'm doing at all? That's like that's the other side of my mind, is that I like the coaching quality, but I feel like my concern sometimes is that the industry thinks that's like kind of like a soft skill within music direction versus someone who's gonna be like, all right, come in and do the Ableton and the MIDI and program this sound and make sure this changes. But it's like, yeah, I can do all that stuff too, but like, anybody can do that stuff. Like a monkey can do that stuff. Like how can you like get into the heads and the minds and the hearts of the people you're working with? Like, but that's really hard to put on paper and explain to somebody. It's really hard to like say to a manager, like, hey, I can like build a bond between your band. They're like, I don't give a shit. make the song loud, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I appreciate it, Chance. And anyway, I just want to say that.
Part of why it was so cool that the way you do what you do is because Ben and I know how good you are at music. We know how good you are at the drums and building an Ableton set and all that. And so when you don't come in and just force us to do what you think we should do and you give us the freedom, at least for me, it means more to me that you're giving me that freedom when I know how good you are at music. Does that make sense? I don't know. You guys both seem to have insecurities. I mean, you guys got to get rid of that stuff.
What is your biggest insecurity?
I don't know. I grew up being insecure as a kid, so now I'm tired of being insecure. I'll say on this tour, though, the times I've been mad musically is when they extended my piano solo and I couldn't come up with something, and I tried 2 different things and I hated what I did. And it's similar to what you were saying, Ben, where I did something and everyone's like, yeah, that was really cool. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. Why am I not able to come up with something else here? And that I was mad at myself. But then an hour later, I'm like, all right, I'm over it. Which is a manual, logical switch that I was like, I'm just going to be over it now because this is just making me feel like shit. And I'm just going to logically turn that off because just existing feeling like shit about yourself sucks, obviously. I'll switch from emotional brain to logic brain when I need to.
How the hell do you do that?
I don't know. A lot of just living in my head and like controlling it. You have to just control your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before we end it, I know that me and Eric were talking about something in the venue yesterday, and I literally said, stop talking, because I want to respond to this for the first time in real time. So what was it? What were you talking about yesterday?
Okay, so I believe the conversation we were having until you expertly held us off, was in line with the things we've talked about. So today on this podcast is just kind of knowing your audience when you play, whether the audience is an actual audience, whether it's YouTube, whether it's you, whether it's other drummers, whatever. It's just like knowing your audience. I had in the same band, I had a very interesting experience when we did our audition process. It ended up with a very, very instructive experience for me and Joey, our bass player. So Joey Farber, he's the bass player in this band. And honestly, nothing sticks to this dude. Like, I don't think there's a bad thing I could say about him.
I agree.
He shows up on time. He's like respectful. He's quiet. He's calm. He plays like a beast. He sounds great all the time. His intuition is fantastic. He knows when to play and when not to. But if I showed you his audition video, you would never, ever guess most of that. Strangely enough, so he came in, we did a huge audition process. I think that we probably got 75 people that we went through across 3 instruments. And then Joey actually came in recommended from someone else. He was on tour somewhere. He recorded something in a hotel room. And he came in from a friend I know who went to Berkeley. And I was like, oh God, a Berkeley kid. God help me. So we turn on this video and Joey is playing all over the damn song. Everywhere you could squeeze a fill, he was squeezing it in. And I was like, oh God, this is exactly what I thought I expected. But nonetheless, we reviewed every video with me, Nicky and I together. And he was like, I really like Joey. And I was like, oh, listen, man, okay. At least I know he can play. It's like, I won't be having to get him to learn how to play. If we pick him, it's going to be like telling him to hold back. Mm-hmm. Fine. Debatably better. So we went with Joey. Turns out, like I said, Joey's an angel, and he shows up day one, and he plays damn near perfectly. And all that overplaying and all that stuff is nowhere in sight. And I remember on our first set of rehearsals at Third Encore, we were walking out one day. It was just him and I walking out in the parking lot. And I told him this story. And I told him, I was like, dude, if it was up to me, I'm so glad you're here. But had Nicky not picked you, I wouldn't have. Because you played so damn much. I was like, I don't know what you were thinking. Like, that's crazy. And he told me, he was like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I should put in. So I just put all that stuff in so you knew I could play. And I was like, oh, that's so wild. I was like, because Joey's young. And I was like, it's so reflective of the industry that we live in right now, the performative side of our industry, the social media performative side of our industry, where we only want to clip the 30 seconds where we can impress other people. And Joey, for the record, has a pretty successful Instagram account where he just like shreds over songs and people love it because he's sick. But he did that, and I was like, oh man, this kid is green. And the big takeaway that hit me in that moment was that, and this goes out to like all the musicians who are listening to this, remember your audience. Remember, it could be the artist who's watching. It could, maybe it's an MD, maybe it's the audience, maybe it's anyone, but just always like think through that filter, because you're not hiring yourself, someone else is. And so make sure that what you play and what you do makes sense to that person. Because if it doesn't matter how good you are. If you can't translate into their language and speak in a way that makes sense to them, then it's never going to land. And so when you talk about the practical sides of musicianship, practice, and getting gigs and stuff like that, it's like, keep these things in mind. Learn all the facility, play all the scales, the licks, the chops, everything you can, do all that stuff. Just remember, you're doing that for you.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Chance?
It's not what you guys think. I just wanted to wrap this up by saying we've been talking about this show for the last 3 podcasts. And if you're listening and you live in LA, you can see this show on November 12th at the El Rey. And you can meet us. And you meet me and Eric. And if you haven't met Ben, you can meet Ben too. And you guys should just come and see what we've been talking about for the last 3 episodes.
It's funny, I never actually talk about what I'm doing on this podcast.
Well, yeah, I mean, this podcast is going to come out before that show, and I'm assuming a lot of your listeners live in LA.
A lot of them do, yeah.
Yeah, so like they can actually come and see what we've been talking about. I think that'd be pretty cool for them, is all I'm saying.
All right, well, there you go.
And that's the show. If you're listening on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, do that. It helps more people find the show, so it'll get bigger and better, and hopefully I'll have a chance to sell out one day. But you'll be an OG listener that can brag to all your friends. Anyways, why don't you go and check us out at bigfatsnaredrum.com and follow us on all the socials. Just search for Big Fat Snare Drum, and you will find us. The show is edited in part using iZotope RX Audio Editor. It's amazing, so go check that out at iZotope.com. And thanks again to Gunnar Olsen for the theme music. Bye!
If we knew more about our sleep, what would we do differently? Would we go to bed at a consistent time or take steps to reduce interruptions to our sleep? With the all-new Sleep Score, Apple Watch measures your bedtime consistency, interruptions, and sleep duration. Then, every morning it combines these factors into an easy-to-understand score from 1 to 100. So you'll know how to take the quality of your sleep from good to excellent. Introducing the new Sleep Score on Apple Watch. iPhone 11 or later required.
Mint is still $15 a month for premium wireless. And if you haven't made the switch yet, here are 15 reasons why you should. 1, it's $15 a month. 2, seriously, it's $15 a month. 3, no big contracts. 4, I use it. 5, my mom uses it. Are you playing me off? That's what's happening, right? Okay, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.